Why are we dressed like this?
Because today, How goes to war.
What's that?
And if you're at war, you need a safe place.
Oh, Fred, what a magnificent castle.
Thank you, Gareth. It's my old family seat. No, don't even think about saying that, Joe.
As if I would, Fred. OK, here's a how for you, then. How do you ruin a good night's sleep?
I don't know, Gareth. How do you ruin a good night's sleep?
Now try and sleep with your ears ringing.
Now my helmet's stuck and I can't get it off. I need a tin opener.
Where's Carol Vorderman when we need her? She's good at getting us out of tight spots.
Now, how can you move mountains?
Even you cannot move mountains.
Fredo, with an attitude like that, you would be stuck up a mountain without an elephant.
Elephant?
Yes, a little clue there, because this how is about the great soldier Hannibal, who had a lot of elephants. Now, Hannibal lived well over 2,000 years ago, and he hailed from Carthage, which is in North Africa. Now, at that time, the Romans dominated this whole area. But Hannibal had one thing the Romans didn't, and that was a lot of elephants. Exactly. So Hannibal eventually went over to Spain, where he defeated the Romans, and he thought, ha-ha, I am now filled with confidence, I will march on Rome. So through Spain he went, through France, until he came to the Alps, some of the highest mountains in Europe.
In the world.
Absolutely. Now, the Alps are very difficult for anybody to climb over. Men on horseback would find it difficult. Men with elephants?
Very difficult.
Hannibal was a great soldier. He decided to march on, and day by day, the elephants and the soldiers climbed the Alps, until one day they came across what was perceived to be an insurmountable problem. They came to a narrow pass which the soldiers could get through, but unfortunately the elephants couldn't.
We can't get through.
No, it's too narrow, this pass.
And we're too wide.
So Hannibal had to move the mountain. He lit bonfires underneath the rocks. The rocks got very hot indeed. So Hannibal then took some soured wine. He could have used any cold liquid, and he threw it over patches of the rocks. This meant that the rocks cracked and shattered. So he battered them down, creating a pathway for the elephants to come through.
We can get through.
Yes, no trouble.
That's all very well for an elephant. What about me?
Whew. That's got it, Fred.
Ooh, thanks, mate.
Anytime.
Ooh. Now, how do you destroy a castle?
Oh, that's easy. You just blast it with a great big cannon.
No, you just lean about for 1,000 years and wait.
Hey?
Come and look at this. Now, look at these walls, Gareth, full of grooves and holes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that's caused by erosion, years of wind and rain beating on it. You see, this is sandstone, and it's actually quite soft.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, seems pretty hard to me, Fred.
When I said soft, Gareth, I meant relatively speaking. Look, come inside. I've got something which will explain it even to you. Come on. Now, they've used two types of rock to build most of the castles in this part of the country. Are you with me? Right. Sandstone and granite, and they are completely different. Now, granite is an igneous rock. It's made of tiny rock particles compressed by the enormous pressure of the material on top of them. And in fact, the pressure's so great, the rock particles become hotter and hotter and hotter, and eventually they melt. And as they melt and when they get very cold, they form a really, really strong rock like that. It's a bit like, if you like, molten sugar. When it cools down, you get a lovely solid lump like that.
I like toffee.
I thought you would, yes. Sandstone, on the other hand, is quite different. It's sedimentary. Again, rock particles compressed, but they don't melt, these particles. They're in layers, and they simply dry out. A bit like this block of compressed sugar, if you like. Now, imagine this is 2 centuries of rain. OK? On the granite, little or no effect at all. But watch what happens when you get that rain on the sandstone.
Oh, it's made holes in it. It's sort of wearing it away.
And that's how you get these weird and wonderful effects in the sandstone of this castle. And that's how, in time, you can destroy a castle.
Yeah, Fred, but that would take ages.
Well, it would, but it keeps that marauding lot outside away from us, keeps them out, doesn't it?
Yeah, they can't get in.
No.
Not unless they've got a trebuchet.
A what?
A trebuchet. How might pigs fly?
No, pigs cannot fly. It's just an old expression. If pigs could fly.
I'll come to the pigs in a moment, but you've seen one of these things before. Fire! What is it, Fred?
Primitive sort of catapult.
It is, yes. The catapult was a medieval weapon used for battering down the walls of castles. The thing about the catapult is, it's not really very powerful. What you need is a far more powerful siege machine. And here is a model of one. They're actually invented by the Chinese over 2,000 years ago, but they're now known by their French 14th century name, which is trebuchet. And this is how it works. It's basically a long stick pivoted round about here with a great bunch of weights at the other end. What you do is you put your projectile on a sling at the end, and the combination of this smooth action and the weights and the long arm made the thing very, very accurate and powerful. In one! How about that?
But Gareth, what
About the pigs?
OK, you asked. It's not very nice, but it's absolutely true that the trebuchet was occasionally used to launch live pigs. What you do is strap a bunch of burning torches to the back of your poor pig and launch him at the castle. If the pig survived the flight, it would run around the castle, setting light to absolutely everything there.
Gareth, that's horrendous.
It is horrific, and it's absolutely true. And if you don't believe me that a trebuchet could launch a pig, have a look at this. Because a few years ago, a group of enthusiasts built a giant trebuchet and used it to launch not a pig, but a piano. The piano flew for over 150 meters. And if that's how a piano might fly, then you might believe that that's how pigs might fly, using a trebuchet. That's how.
Oh. Was that a flying pig?
Flying cow, actually.
You had to be careful of them during the war, you know.
How now, brown cow?
Oh, is this a how about posh
Does he have
talking?
to speak posh? Yes.
No, it isn't. For once, it is about brown cows. For this how, I'll have to take you back to World War II. The greatest danger to the civilian population in Britain at that time was the night raids by the enemy bombers, and cities and towns were particular targets because of the damage which could be done there. So every night they had to have a complete blackout. Imagine stepping outside in the city at night in total blackness. You never knew what you might bump into. Oh, ow, my foot. And things were no better in the country either. There you were, driving your car with the covers over the headlights so you couldn't really see a lot in front of you. And then suddenly, a huge dark shape. Oh dear, an unhappy cow and a dented car. Now, this was a particular problem for brown cows because they didn't reflect any light to warn the drivers. So some farmers came up with the ingenious idea of painting them white in places. You see, there you have a completely dark cow, put a few lines on it. Fantastic. There you have a hazard warning of a cow in front. Isn't that marvellous?
Carol, you're kidding. Surely they can paint cows.
Yes, they did. I've got proof.
Yeah?
Have a look at this picture. This picture is entitled An Unusual Blackout Livery for an Essex Cow.
Looks like a tricky situation, number 2. Looks like there's 50,000 of the enemy on the north walls.
I think we're surrounded.
Better send for reinforcements then.
And how are we going to do that if we're surrounded?
We get a message through the enemy lines.
Yes, but how?
When you're in a sticky situation, number 2, send for a stick.
How did a stick save an army. A how that goes back 2,400 years. Come with me to ancient Greece, and there, 400 years before the birth of Christ, the Spartans down here were fighting a war with the invading Persians up here. And often they needed to get messages from Spartan HQ down here to their commanders on the front line. But of course there were nasty Persian spies trying to intercept those messages. So the Spartans had to invent the world's first ever secret coding machine, the first ever cipher, and that was it.
Fred, that's not a cipher, that's just a stick, a broom handle or something.
Oh, honestly,
It is a
Fred.
stick, it is a handle, but it's a very clever one because it's called the skitali, and how it works is this, you see. What they used to do was wrap a strip of leather thong around their stick or skitali and write the message carefully on it. But as well as the message, they would also write on the tape, because you can make one of these yourself, they'd write on the tape a completely meaningless jumble of other letters, so that if this particular tape got into the enemy hands, the hands of a spy, it would mean nothing, because it's just a hopeless jumble of letters, doesn't mean a thing. Then the generals would have to get someone totally unimportant, a real oik, to deliver this to the front line. Private Jones, come here, you nasty, horrible little man.
Sir?
Deliver this very secret message to Commander Vorderman on the front line, but do not read it.
Won't read it. Secret message, sir.
Off you go, you nasty, horrible little man. But even if Jones did read it, and even if he was a spy, it doesn't really matter, because he couldn't understand it anyway.
Commander Vorderman, an incredibly secret message for you. I've read it. I can't understand a thing.
Thank you, Private Jones. You are dismissed immediately.
Off would go Private Jones. Meanwhile, Commander Vorderman would also have a stick, a skitali. It had to be of exactly the same diameter as the one I've got. She would wrap the thong or the tape around her stick, around her skitali. She would see all those meaningless letters, but of course, if she tipped the skitali towards her, there on the top line was my secret message. What is it, Carol?
Attack at dawn.
And that's how a stick saved an army.
Great way to send a secret message, eh?
Yeah, a bit slow, though, Fred. Listen, while we're sending messages, why don't we send one to Carol?
Good idea. I do miss the old bird, occasionally. But will we catch the post?
Yeah, but first, we've got to catch a pigeon.
Oh, yeah.
Good boy. Come here. Come on. Come on.
That's supposed to be lucky, that is.
How old is the Airmail Postal Service?
About the same age as the invention of the airplane. About 100 years, I suppose.
I'm talking about something older than that. I'm talking about pigeon post. Now, pigeon post is one of the oldest ways of sending messages, and it's also one of the fastest. But how does it work? Gareth, I require your assistance. Now, imagine my friend Gareth lives in Glasgow.
Aye, I can do that, so I can.
Okay.
No problem.
Now then, I live in London and I want to send messages to you.
Yep.
I take your homing pigeons to London. Right. Okay. Now, once I'm in London, I write my letter and then I take out one of Gareth's pigeons and I put my letter in a tiny container and tie it to the leg of the pigeon. Then I release it and he flies back home to Glasgow.
Oh, that's fantastic. A love letter from Carol Vorderman. That's tremendous.
But how old is the pigeon post? Well, in both World Wars, pigeons were used to send messages. One of the pigeons, called the Duke of Normandy, actually won the animal equivalent of the Victoria Cross. Very brave pigeon he was. Don't know where he tied it, but he got one anyway. But pigeons were used before the World Wars. 200 years before that, the Duke of Wellington, famous for his Wellington boots, used a pigeon to send a message back home to England that he had won the Battle of Waterloo. But he wasn't the first to use pigeons, oh no. The ancient Greeks, many hundreds of years before that, used them to send the results of the Olympic Games to lots and lots of towns throughout Greece. But the Greeks weren't the first, because the ancient Egyptians over 3,000 years ago also used pigeon post. And they sent their messages written in hieroglyphics. So how old is the Airmail Postal Service? If you're talking pigeons, over 3,000 years. That's how.
How is that, the varlet? Hey, Fred, here's one for you.
Go on, then.
How can a staircase save a castle?
I don't know. How?
Well, you probably already noticed that this kind of staircase, like all staircases in castles, goes round in a clockwise direction.
Yes?
Well, you've probably also noticed that it makes things rather difficult for you and your sword.
I can't seem to get at you.
Precisely.
Oh.
You see, most people are right-handed, which means that they hold their sword in their right hand.
Yes.
Now, that's fine for me defending my castle, but as far as you're concerned, your sword hand is obstructed by this central pillar, this mule. My defence of the castle will be successful. Hang on a minute, Fred. I tell you what, it's hard work being a knight.
I'm getting really sweaty.
I'm getting sweaty and very smelly.
And do you know something else? The farther you go back in history, the smellier they were. Here, you've bent my sword. How do you get ready for that really big night out? These days, you know, people all smear themselves with all sorts of funny-smelling chemical concoctions, but in the old days, they never bothered with things like that. They had lots of nice, natural beauty treatments. That's for your hair, Toppy, and that's for your hair, Carol. Perfectly natural.
Yes.
Fill it full of vitality.
That's
Give
great.
it a lovely sheen.
It works. What is it, Fred?
Absolutely marvellous.
What is it?
That is hippopotamus. That's antelope dung. But all perfectly natural and very good for you.
Who says?
The ancient Egyptians, that's who. And this wouldn't concern us, but if you wanted to get rid of grey hair, you'd use that, perfectly natural.
And what is it?
Bull's blood. And no dinner party or dance would be complete without one of these. Now, what do you think you do with that?
It's a candle.
It's
No.
a firelighter. It's firelighter.
You're on the right lines. It's made of wax. You stick it on your head, you see, like that, and the wax is impregnated with wonderfully smelling herbs and spices. And as you get hot, so too does the candle. It melts and those wonderful fragrances drift down through your hair and right across your face. It's your own personal, natural air freshener. That was a rocking good night, wasn't it, lads?
That was great.
I told you how that wax on the head would work, didn't I?
Oh, the air, it's so fresh.
Can you smell the herbs, the fragrance? Your own personal air freshener.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's how the ancient Egyptians prepared for a great night out on the town. This is a bit spooky, isn't it? I tell you what, though, that was some party, wasn't it?
It was a good party, Fred, but the food wasn't up to much. And there was no ice cream, and you can't have a party without ice cream. Mind you, they didn't have freezers back then, did they?
Yeah, but that needn't stop you, you know. How can you make ice cream without using a freezer?
Easy, stick the mix out overnight when it snows.
You could only do it in the winter, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Couldn't do it in the summer, could you?
No,
And
no.
exactly the same problem confronted American servicemen based in the United Kingdom during the Second World War, because, as we know, Americans love ice cream, but there just simply weren't enough freezers to go around. Should we make some ice cream, Private Jones?
Yes,
Come
sir.
with me, because Americans always like to do things on the grand scale.
Yes, sir.
And they would make their ice cream in huge oil drums like this.
Yes, sir.
20 gallons of milk would go in there.
Yes, sir.
Okie dokie. And several kilos of dried milk as well. Okay, and on top of that, they'd put, if they were lucky enough to get them in the wartime years, some chocolate chips. Give it a good stir.
Yes,
Private
sir.
Jones, come on, stir man. So that's it. And all you needed on top of that was simply a B-17 Flying Fortress. B-17 Flying Fortress, one of the great aircraft of World War II, capable of flying at enormous heights, going enormous distances, and carrying an enormous amount of ice cream. And that's exactly what the American servicemen did. They loaded the drums of ice cream on board the B-17s, and at the height these planes flew, over 10,000 feet, the air temperature dropped to below zero. In other words, freezing, and that froze up the ice cream a treat. So when they landed, they had gallons and gallons of delicious ice cream. And that's how you can make ice cream without using a freezer. And that's how Howe went to war.
And that's
How for now. Come on, mate, time to go home.
Fred.
Yeah.
Just one thing.
What?
How are we going to get?
We'll get a taxi or a train.
Don't be soft. This is the 13th century. Trains won't be invented for at least another 500 years.
Good point.
And another thing.
computers